Right. Our next stop on our journey of figuring out exactly what it takes to make living things is for us to talk about DNA. All living things contain DNA and use DNA to support their life processes. But what exactly is it that DNA does? Now, first of all, before we talk about that, let's just note that picture in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. DNA is super complicated. It's a bunch of atoms bonded together. In this picture, we have hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. All atoms you might be familiar with. You might recognize them from applications you've seen in other science classes. Oftentimes when I use these atoms in molecules in science classes, they're really simple combinations of them, like carbon dioxide or even something that bonds together nitrogen with some other atoms in a way that makes like really simple structures for, I don't know, explosions in chemistry or in physical science. But usually it's like 4 atoms bonded together, 5 atoms, maybe up to 10 atoms bonded together a certain way. Here we have just a multitude of atoms bonded together because DNA has to be complicated. What is it that DNA does that's so special? Well, DNA has to contain information. Okay, it's not just chemicals bonded together. It's chemicals bonded together that contain information that's able to take a bunch of non-living chemicals and turn them into an ordered living system. This DNA molecule that you see, it will react with other atoms around it and cause those atoms to come together in a very specific way, bond together a very specific way, and it will actually build proteins, and it can actually copy itself, build copies of itself as DNA, transmitting information about how to build proteins to other cells. So it's really, really amazing what the DNA is able to do. It's able to code the information for you to build all of the different proteins that you need to everything you need to do to survive. What are the things you need to do to survive? Well, you need to extract and convert energy from your surroundings. We talked about that one. You need to sense and respond to changes, and reproduction is necessary for life. Okay, so let's talk about each one of those. Plants convert energy from sunlight into useful energy that they can use. If you've ever sat out in the sun, you probably noticed that the sunlight feels warm on your skin. You can sense that there's energy there. But you can't convert that energy into useful energy for your cells to survive. You don't have chlorophyll in your cells, so you aren't able to do that. So that means that the DNA of plants has to have information telling plant cells to produce chlorophyll. And it must have the instructions for building chlorophyll molecules so that when other atoms cozy up next to parts of the DNA molecule, it will actually make chlorophyll molecules. And then the chlorophyll is able to react with sunlight in a way that makes useful energy. That has to be programmed into the DNA of plant cells. Your cells also need to be able to do specific things. Your DNA needs to code for your cells to be able to use glucose energy, energy and sugars that you take in so that you can break apart those sugars and make the basic energy. But you don't just take in those simple sugars. You have to break down other more complicated matter. Like when you eat a salad or when you eat like ground beef or meat, like your body has to be able to take those complicated molecules that make up those things and break it down into things that you can use, and then break down those simple things that you can use. There's a lot that goes into this. DNA codes all of it. Also, DNA codes your ability to sense and respond to changes. The cells in your eyes have DNA that will synthesize certain proteins that have the ability to work in receptors in your eyes that allow you to see light, sense either colored light in your cone cells or the brightness of light in your rod cells in your eyes. So that's something that your DNA has to be able to do. And then we're going to talk a whole lot in a later chapter about how DNA is essential in reproduction. DNA is actually able to copy itself so that you're able to take your DNA and code it into new cells to replace your old dead cells in your body. And DNA is also an integral part of sexual reproduction as well. So we're going to talk a whole lot about DNA, but isn't it amazing that your body has built into it information to support all of your life processes just by this chemical arrangement of this chemical that makes up a lot of your body. Hey, one other thing before we go. I just want to point out that if I were to find a specific living thing and just take all of the atoms and molecules that make up that living thing and put them in one place, I would have a pile of goo, non-living goo. It takes for these chemicals to be bonded together in a very specific way, like you see in the lower right-hand corner of image, a very specific way in order to actually have life that sustains life processes. DNA really, really is an amazing, intricate thing.